ready. All right. Good evening, and it's 2022, Tuesday, 7 p.m., and so I will call to order this regular meeting of the Millwood City Council. Why don't we begin with a Pledge of Allegiance, and Chief Soto, this evening, if you would lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with.
Thank you very much. So, for the record, we do have a quorum this evening of the members. So, Christina, if you would call roll.
Mayor Freeman.
Present.
Councilmember Beasy. Councilmember Culler.
Present.
Councilmember Van Hees. Councilmember Sander.
Present.
Councilmember Stravens.
Present.
Thank you very much. And so tonight, presented before you is the agenda for tonight's regular meeting. Is there any council member who would like to propose any changes or amendments to tonight's agenda as presented? Seeing or hearing none, do I have a motion by the council to approve tonight's agenda?
I'll make a motion to approve the agenda.
Is there a second?
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? Seeing or hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Are there any opposed? Hearing none, the motion is passed by the unanimously by the quorum. And that brings us to our agency reports tonight. We have Chief Soto from the Spokane Valley Fire Department here. Thank you very much.
Good evening, Mayor, council members, city members. So we'll start with we have a new look. Actually, we're just trying out different looks, trying to just make it look a little bit better and a little bit. E7 incidents of 911 call, 344 responses. Of the year to date, we're at 17,000. If you look to the right, obviously the bulk of our calls are for EMS. And then below that is our individual fire units, apparatus units, and you'll see we have some pretty busy units, especially the top 5, which are really moving right now. Next slide, please. So on this slide, what we're showing is our entire response areas, and we're just showing it broken down by the busiest areas. Obviously, the Opportunity neighborhood with stations 1, 8, and 7 are the biggest, however, here in Millwood, Station 2 is not that far behind with almost 10% of the call volume. Next slide, please. Comparing in red 2022 with blue, which is from 2021, the BLS calls are up almost 6%, and ALS calls are almost up 5%, both from last year, which is not good. However, overall fires are down roughly 23% from last year, which is really good. Some job and community risk reduction for that matter, and that's why we're here this evening as well. Overall, we're up almost 5% from last year's call. Thank you. So this is a year-to-year going back to 2018, just in comparison, showing where 2022 is. I think the biggest thing that you can take away from this is that all the way to the right, the bulk of our calls, over 14,000 calls, are just EMS alone, 18. Our EMS calls alone are almost more than the total call volume for 2016. So again, we're busy and it's not getting any slower. Next slide, please. And this is our last slide, again, just showing, again, nearly or just over 21% in total call volume. And this year, we're at 4.7 and have been holding steady there. At this time, I will entertain any questions that you might have.
Any questions for Chief Soto at this time? Thank you very much, Chief.
Must have a wall.
Absolutely.
Any idea the percentage of those that are really emergency? Or are they just,
Well, that has been known to be a very touchy question, right? Because for me, who see, there's not too much I would consider an emergency. However, so it just depends. It's everyone's perception is a reality, and if you perceive your issue to be a 911 emergency, you're going to call, and we have to go. And we're to break that down. Can we recode some of those calls? Yes, but all we can do is recode them from a major emergency, so an ALS call, advanced life support call, down to a lower grade call, like a basic life support call.
is there some public outreach about trying to get rid of the stapler?
Oh,
I mean, you know, I guess I'm concerned that that big increase
right.
is not gonna be there when there really is.
A later response because we're coming from outside that area. So absolutely, and we're always on social media, and that includes our website. So SpokenValleyFire.com, educate everyone, not just our own citizens that we respond to, but all people in general that go there. We often talk about what are real emergencies or what are true emergencies, things of that nature. So we are doing our best to educate and inform our citizens.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Any other questions for Chief Soto? Thank you very much.
Great questions, though. Thank you.
And please note for the record that, thank you very much. I will ask one last time.
I am. This is Shauna.
And we have, for the record, that we have a full quorum of council members prior to beginning the action items. So that concludes our agency reports for this evening. Public comments. Have we received any public comments for tonight's meeting, either by email directly or by U.S. mail?
No, we have not.
So we have received no public comments. That brings us to item number 6.
Not based on my understanding, no.
So no executive session. That brings us to item number 7, our action items for tonight. Our first action item is the consent agenda, and it is a little bit of a lengthy one, so I will read it. The consent agenda tonight consists of the proclamation that I just signed for the Fire Prevention Week, consists of the September 2022 regular meeting for the minutes for the regular meeting of the Millwood City Council. There is a change order for the new court claims the Buckeye Avenue project, the retainage release. Are there any items of those? Are there any items on separately? Seeing or hearing none, rise to the top as presented.
I make a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented.
Is there a second?
Second.
We'll give it to Andy. There you go. Is there any, moved and seconded, is there any discussion by the council? Seeing or hearing no discussion, are there any opposed? Hearing none opposed, the consent agenda is accepted unanimously this evening. Thank you very much. That brings us to item 7B, a public hearing. And the public hearing is in accordance with the Resolution 2022-09, amendment to the 2023-2028 Transportation Improvement Plan. And then there is a second item there, the 2023 revenue sources and property tax increase. So let's take 7BI, Resolution 20 Amendment. Mr. Allen.
Okay, you guys up there now? So we needed to do another amendment to, there we go. So we needed to do another amendment to the TIP. We had some changes to some pricing, and when we were putting out funding, or applying for funding, we had one project that wasn't included in that. So you see the ones that are highlighted in yellow, based from when we had asked our TIP earlier this year. There were some increases there once we got some numbers in from UP Railroad, which increased the price. So that number got changed to $3.7 million. The one where it says 2024, so it's the Argonne FDR, which is a full depth reclamation, and to TIB, which is Transportation Improvement Board, which is where we get most of our funding for our roads. They made a recommendation that we combine two of those projects, and so that's what we did. We took one, because those were two separate projects at one time. One was a full depth reclamation from Trent to Buckeye, and then the other one was a grind and overlay on Argonne from Buckeye to Frederick. So we took their suggestion, combined that, so we could pull it from one fund from TIB. The other one was a sidewalk project, which we actually didn't have in the TIP at the time. That there was funding that became available, so we that in the TIP. So that's on the Dalton sidewalk replacement. So we had worked with the engineers to look at that area where all the trees are there on Dalton between, well, we looked at the whole corridor on Dalton. You know, we've had nothing but issues with sidewalks and trees. They just don't go together very well. We've been fighting that for years. So we worked with our engineers, came up with a plan to try to the trees there and create more space for the trees and the roots. So what to do? So we're going to do from Marguerite to Argonne and try, narrow that roadway in that area, and then also do like a bridge over where the root structures are in the sidewalk. But by narrowing that road up a little bit, that buys us another 3 to 4 feet on that side. Sidewalks causing trip hazards. So we're hopeful that we can get funding from them. We had some money in there, but you know, as you know, our street fund has been pretty depleted over the years, and so there's just no, our match is only 5%. So our dollar goes a long way. So that $436,000 it's going to cost us, we're only going to be on the hook for about 5% of that. So it was worth trying to go after the funding. So that's kind of what drove us to do the amendment to the TIP. And as long as we were doing it, we made the other changes.
The amendments to the TIP as presented. So at this time, I will open the public hearing for the TIP. It is, or for this resolution for the amendment for the TIP. It is 9:15 p.m. And have we received any written comments for resolution 2022-09?
No, we have not.
For resolution 2022-09. If you would, please step forward to the podium.
Is it on? Okay. Mike Kester, Spokane Valley Fire Commissioner. I would just like to ask Paul if we could get a copy of the engineer's plans for the widening to know what's open and what isn't. So we can get a copy of the engineers so they know what's going to be closed, when it's going to be closed, when they start on that widening project. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. When you get it, that's what we need to be able to get
We'll be
from
sure
it.
to include the
Yeah.
on that when we do get a copy of our traffic control plan.
Real good.
Yeah, no, the engineers will we'll have a full public outreach as part of that project once we finally figure out where we're at
Okay.
with that.
Thank you.
For public comments regarding the amendment to the TIP. Second call, third and final call for public comments. Seeing no other person rise, I will close the public comments for resolution 2022-09 and ask the council for their pleasure for resolution 2022-09.
Approve resolution 2209, the amendment to our 2023 to 2028 transportation improvement plan.
Is there a second? Seeing or hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Are there any opposed? Hearing none opposed, the motion is. That brings us to public hearing item number 2, our 2023 revenue sources and property tax increase. This is Ms. Mackin.
Sorry, Paul. I can't move it. Ha. Thank you. So, without going into too much detail, I'll let you guys ask questions if you have some. This is the way our taxes, property. I've moved everything up earlier this year because the assessor has proven to me that they're usually within 2% of their, when they finalize and what the end property tax will be. So this year, I'll 102 to be our number instead of, the usual 101, and then we usually add 2 1/4 onto that. So it's just been climbing up and up in the last few years, so I feel pretty comfortable putting it at 700,000. And all of the sales tax add-ons, like the criminal justice and brokered natural gas, look pretty good too. They're all fallen a little higher than normal. And then business and occupational taxes are 278. And then the REIT has looked really good this year, but a lot of that is due to Walgreens has been sold twice in the last year, all kind of behind closed doors. I mean, nobody knew about it. We weren't informed. It just kind of traded hands. So that's where that comes from. I don't know if it's being moved around in the same corporation or what's going on, but here. So I'm thinking really less. And the next slide just shows revenues, licenses and permits, intergovernmental. I don't have any of the grants in the intergovernmental right now because we're not sure where we are on that right now. And everything else is same as usual. Anybody have any questions on any of that portion?
Question, so marijuana, how does that tie in? Is it considered retail, is it separate?
So a certain amount of it comes from sales tax, but really falls in that it's a state share.
I'll just add in, when the portion of the tax revenues flowing, what silently came in to be a substantial bonus to the local jurisdictions, most of it's all held at the state level.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
It has been steadily dwindling.
They're giving a little back next year
We'll see.
to put us back where we originally were. So, well, yeah.
Then Debbie, are there restrictions on that use, or does it just go into our general fund?
It actually supplements our law enforcement contract. Yeah.
Remember that Councilmember BC can't hear you if you don't speak into your microphone.
Then if you want to pull up the levy calculation, we'll just take a early look at it. So there's 4 calculations done. There's your highest lawful, which shows in that first talking about adding see where it says 101% in the 3rd column of that first box. So that's the next little area is the statutory levy limit. So that's a lot of money. The next calculation is the two calculations that we do. We put forth the resolutions for, which we will do next month. So there's the asking. It's a percent above the regular. And then lastly is we get the lowest of those numbers. But we still do this resolution after we actually adopt it with, things that might roll in at the last minute. And so it's because the county does collect them from our citizens regardless, but we don't get them and that's all I have. If there's any questions, I'd be happy to answer.
Further questions for Debbie? So at this time, the 2023 revenue sources and property tax increase.
We have not.
So we will open a public hearing. I would remind the council there is no action. This is the first hearing on this item and is required to be heard twice. So I will open the public hearing for those in person. Is there anybody in the audience tonight who would like to make a comment regarding the presentation of the property tax increase? Final call for public comments. Seeing no one come forward, I will close the public comment period at 7:27. We can assume it was opened at 7:27. Our next touch on this, Debbie, will be at the regular meeting in November, correct? And at that time, we will ask the council to accept the ad valorem tax and the revenue sources, correct?
Correct.
All right, so just to remind council, that is a quorum plus one meeting. So we will be, this evening, at the close, we will be discussing quorum plus one for our next regular meeting. So thank you very much. That brings us to item 7C. Who wants that? Mr. Wurst, thank you.
Ordinance 157 that created section 1.12. Every year in August, the city would call for bids for newspapers published of general circulation, and that would be the method. City. I'm not aware of that happening since I've started working with the city. We have gone out and looked at various options, and there was a movement to away from the spokesman review a few years back for cost savings purposes. We would like to do away with that section of the code. There's no need for us to go out and do it by a call for bids. Recent circumstances is that the predominant majority of statutes will require that certain things be published in the official newspaper, or the newspaper of highest circulation within the county, which is the spokesman. So for that reason, I think we'd like to just get rid of the procedural mechanism in the code and proceed forward in a different method of choosing the.
Also say that we've run Herald requires such a lead time to get anything published, and then it is, what is their publication now? Are they weekly? Are they?
Yes, once a week on Fridays.
Yeah, and that just no longer meshes with when we're having to make an official hearing or public notice or something like that. I don't think in '85 they saw the demise of print media as it is currently going on, but that's where we are, and so we are pretty much left with one paper or none. Do I have a motion on ordinance 530 as presented?
Ordinance 520 is presented.
530.
Sorry.
Is there a second?
Second.
Moved and seconded. Is there any discussion from the council? Seeing or hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Are there any opposed? Hearing none opposed, ordinance 530 is approved unanimously. Thank you very much. That brings us to resolution 2022-10, a resolution to establish the spokesman review as the city's official publication. Mr. Wurst.
Well, dovetailing off of that and following up on what the mayor has indicated, there's a request of the council to designate, we do have to designate an official newspaper of the county for notice purposes, public record. We do think it would be best to move towards the spokesman review, again, emphasizing that the timing mechanism that is within the, is not conducive to our schedule necessarily. So there are times where we need to, every ordinance needs to be published. It's not effective until 5 days thereafter, and that's by code. So if you adopt now, Christina can arrange, but it's probably going to be published at the first point next week, a week from Friday. That's action needs. So.
Any questions for Mr. Wurst on resolution? Hearing none, do I have a motion by the council?
I make a motion to approve Resolution 2022-10 as presented.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion by the council? Seeing or hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Are any opposed? Hearing none opposed, Resolution 2022-10 is passed unanimously. Thank you. That brings us to Ordinance 531, Time and Place of Council Meetings. This changes are, as requested by Mr. Stravens, Commissioner Stravens, Councilmember Stravens. See, I there before muddled it all up. From 7 p.m. to 6 p.m. So I don't really think there's any major question other than convenience of the council. So at this point, I would ask the council, not if there are any legal questions, but is there a motion on this ordinance to begin discussion? Go ahead.
I'll make a motion to approve ordinance 531.
Is there a second?
Okay.
Is there a
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Moved and seconded. Discussion by the council.
So I would just say that in terms of time, that in today's world, I think 6 p.m. makes more sense. I think that with hybrid work models, it's difficult to continue the workday past 9 o'clock. Staff and council, now and in the future, I think it's important to think that too, so.
Any other comments?
No, I'm just going to ask Kelly to bring snacks.
I would have been an hour late.
I can do that.
All I will say as the mayor is, sitting in your position, I have seen the effects of unintended consequences, and from a standpoint, that 6 p.m. is a better start. We may have some discussion from citizens in the future down the line, correct? So it is the council's pleasure. I think in consideration for what Mr. Straven says, 6 p.m. is beneficial to the state matter to me, but as Mr. Straven said, Councilmember Straven said, somebody else will sit in this chair at some point in the future. So are there any other comments by any council member? Ms. Beesey, do you have any comments regarding this in the ether?
I do not, thank you.
Thank you. So at this time, we have a motion and a second. So my city attorney has asked if, on this ordinance, since it would change the, since it would not only change the time for the council, but would change the ability or potentially change the ability for the public to participate in the meetings. And as we have a strong commitment to open public meetings, it wishes to make a comment on the change in start time for the council meetings.
I think Chief Soto will be able to make the 6 o'clock meeting. I'm guessing.
And did we receive any public comments regarding the ordinance?
No, we did not.
Written public comments. So we have for the public, for the audience at home, we have two individuals in the audience this evening. They have declined to, or Mr. Kester has commented on comments, and so at this point, I would say we've had a motion and a second. So, all in favor of ordinance 531 as presented, please say aye.
Aye.
Are there any opposed? Hearing none opposed, ordinance 531 is passed unanimously. Thank you very much. That brings us to ordinance 532. Authorize the mayor to commence condemnation proceedings. Mr. Wurst, would you like to address this?
Will do. So the council will recall, back in June, we brought forward to you an ordinance to authorize condemnation proceedings. That was, and those, specifically it would be against Inland Empire Paper. There is a portion of property owned by Inland Empire Paper that is necessary in order for the Argonne project to move forward. We were sent as to whether a property from Inland Empire Paper. We have not received, the city's not received possession and use from Inland Empire Paper. And that caused, forgive me, what was the dollar amount from WSDOT funding? Funding from the State Department of Transportation to be forfeited by the city of Spokane, Millwood, excuse me. That's Freudian, to throwing them out there, forfeit. My bad. I will say we are continuing to try to work with Inland Empire Paper to obtain possession and use. Possession and use means simply that. We can use the property, we possess it, we have but it's a reservation of the value of which the parties disagree on that would be determined in a condemnation proceeding. So to be clear, we're still trying to standing, and they would grant us a possession use. Inland Empire Paper has communicated its concerns about business interruption. We have made overtures and discussions and resolved yet at this time. The reason the condemnation ordinance is coming back to you is, upon reflection, we're not comfortable with the statutory required notice that was, the notice that was given to Inland Empire Paper prior to what's called a final action, the adoption of the condemnation ordinance in June. It should come as no surprise that there was an ordinance that was presented to the council. This matter's been in discussion at for a great period. Argonne project in and of itself, I think I've communicated to the city council. Mayor Mork and I were sitting down at Spokane County discussing this project back in 2009. There's been public meetings, public planning process, interested parties. So, given necessary, both published and sent paper, they were advised, Inland Empire Paper was advised that tonight the council would be asked to take final action, which is the adoption of the condemnation ordinance. You'll see this is, except in section 6, we're repealing ordinance 528, which was the prior ordinance adopted by the council. Mayor, do you have any further comment about the position we're in? And I just would say that we can continue to try to push possession and use, but to the extent funding opportunities come along, the city, if it's going to push this project that's been in planning for almost 15 years, has to do something to acquire that final piece of property. All other property owners have worked with the city and reached resolution.
So just very quickly, to piggyback on Mr. Wurst's comments, to say that we are still planning is, in my opinion, incorrect. We have a design. If we had possession and use of this bid. So the project is designed and ready to go. We've aligned numerous sources of funding. The funding that we have received, we are required to pursue any and all means to obtain said land to complete project, including condemnation. So we have a contractual requirement with WSDOT to continue. Approval of this ordinance will not hinder a continued dialogue with Inland Empire Paper to obtain possession and use of that property and avoid condemnation. But we need to fulfill our contractual obligation, funding that had the potential to be obligated to us. We still have a fair amount of funding that we have received that we need to use that funding as well. So all parties have been advised. That is what's going on. We have not received any comments from Inland Empire Paper. We have not received any contact from Inland Empire Paper regarding condemnation. So I would say that this does not, they've received all their notices. They have not replied, so my guess is that they are fully understanding and in discussions with IEP, the city's engineers, WashDOT, everybody like that has made it clear that this is not in any way that is unplanned. It is part of the process that we need to go through. So are there any questions on this ordinance for Mr. Wurst or myself? Not hearing any, so at this time, is there a motion?
Ordinance 532 is presented to authorize Mayor Freeman to commence condemnation proceedings.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Seeing or hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Excuse me? Are there any opposed?
Aye.
We have Ms. BC as an aye. Are there any opposed? Hearing none opposed, the motion is passed unanimously. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Ordinance is passed unanimously. Thank you. So that brings us to reports tonight. That concludes our action items for this evening. Thank you. And that a Public Works report.
So we just about completed our Frederick Waterline project. So remember, we upgraded that line from a 4-inch to an 8-inch. It was a fire hydrant that was in the middle of the block to the end of the block, so it's covered on both ends there. So they paved yesterday, and during the rest of the week, they'll be working on doing the restoration of the lawns and right-of-way. So it should be hopefully completed here by the end of this week. We did set out very diligently on getting this done, and to my knowledge, our program requirements. So they had to either have the device tested or reach out to us to let us know when it would be tested. So but everybody was informed. We had a couple that were shut off for violation. They came into compliance.
I have 5, but they had a deal with me, so let me comment.
That means they met our compliance by at least getting back to us. So we will follow up with the rest of those that we have agreements with. We did have a meeting with Spokane County Utilities. They had reached out to us regarding some GFC fees. So we had a meeting internally to try to get that resolved with some of the questions that they had. And so we'll continue to work on that and try to determine exactly how many ERUs we have for this, which will be the basis for what our treatment costs will be in the future. So, street department. So as part of that waterline project on Frederick, kind of in the lower end of that, we ended up putting a catch basin in there. We ran into an issue because that North Valley Interceptor, the main sewer trunk line, is very shallow down there. We also had a gas line change order that you approved earlier. Was we had a gas line, old water line, space, so we had to make some adjustments, and that extra cost was for the additional asphalt that we had to go to move it closer to the roadway. So we ended up making some alterations. Instead of having 2 dry wells on each side, we had a dry well on the other side for stormwater. Leaf program. So typically the leaf program usually starts about the 3rd week of October, Monday of October, which happens to be on Halloween this year. So it'll be 1 week shorter than typical. Part of that is due to the weather. The other part is due to increased fuel costs. So instead of us running around the city picking up a load here and a load there, and we decided to push that back 1 week. Plus, that also allows us to finish up some of our fall projects for you guys. The mayor had mentioned about the Argonne project, and you had just voted on the condemnation process. So, and he's right, we haven't stopped working on this project. We just turned in our application to the crossing. So in order to do any modifications out there, we have to put a petition to the UTC. But first, we had to reach an agreement with UP Railroad so that there would be no issue by the time it got to UTC. So that was all taking place in the background while we were waiting for the acquisitions for the properties. That just got sent to UTC. The one at, we actually have 2 crossings, not one. And so that'll be on Spokane Valley to apply for that petition. And our engineer's been working closely with Spokane Valley with them to make that petition as well. Just because of the reason you have to have that petition is because anytime there's an AC goes through and then they authorize those, but they have to review them before they can be done. Park, the guys been busy out there. We did a restoration in the park earlier on the interior in the spring. Changed a bunch of things out, repainted everything. We had some exterior things that needed to be taken care of as well. And so the guys replaced the soffit that was sagging down and trim and all that. So that's all been replaced, looks good. Should last another 30 years. And anyway, they were painting today. We should be finishing that up tomorrow and the next day. You can see we've got some new lighting throughout the city hall. The whole upstairs, I believe, is complete now, and the downstairs, I think they just finished that too. They may have a couple lights left to be down there. They finished the shop. In the morning, we turn the lights on. We don't shut them off until we leave. So as you walk through, the lights come on or go off. So, which is savings. We started the tree board, as you remember, got their grant for doing the tree inventory and the management plan. Jim Flott from Community Forestry Consultants started the last week in September. He's been working where he's fitting it in between some other jobs due to COVID-related issues. He's got some makeup work to do with some other clients, and so he's fitting us in. So within the next 2-3 weeks, then once he has that information, he will and start to develop with the tree board tree management plan. And we'll be having some communities to have discussion, plan probably about 2 meetings. So we can go over what the management plan is and have community current ordinances with his recommendations and then present that to the council. So we'll keep everybody informed as to when those public meetings are. That's about all I've got.
Questions for Paul?
Are they doing on Vista? Want to do on Vista?
So there's a crossing there, but because it's not our crossing, we can't petition the UTC to hit the signal.
What changes are they considering?
It's just advanced warning signs or signals, so there'll be some detectors and that will go from, so the link between this signal at Argonne and the one at Vista.
Oh,
They literally, that requires a petition.
Yeah, that's according to UTC.
Yes, any change. It was literally, we're going to change some circuit boards in there to make communication different. That requires us to get Spokane Valley involved. Any other questions? I do want to make a quick statement on the LEAF program. One of the things that we've been discussing with the LEAF program is we're going to have to consider what we're going to do with the leaves. We are running out of free homes for our trucking. What we've been able to do for a long time is simply drive across the river. But if we're looking at transporting these vast distance to look at some other options. So we're going to get through this leaf season because I think Public Works has found some this year, but we're going to work internally to come up with some potential scenarios with respect to staging leaves or things like that. We may be looking at, to continue the program, additional costs for transport and disposal. Now, disposal doesn't necessarily mean going to the landfill. It could be going to Bartek for composting. Options are going to have to be researched because we may have to stage the product differently. For in these chairs, that will more than likely to start coming up with some concepts, because with diesel fuel and staffing prices and things like that, it's no longer becoming for a half hour to take a load of leaves someplace, or an hour and a half.
Usually an hour, by the time
Yeah.
we do a round trip. The farming land is not there like it was. There's so much development going on, and the guys that used to take our leaves for years and years and years have retired or passed on. So, and the new owners don't have any desire for farming, so they're subdividing all the land off.
This is the end of the LEAF program, but there will be some decisions that need to be made, particularly with response where we house our leaves at the end of the day. Any other questions?
I just had a question about the LEAF program. The community garden isn't taking them or doesn't want them, or what's?
So to take them there for this year, that we're, it's kind of on a year-to-year basis. They don't own the land. So IEP owns the land. So they've been very generous about letting the community use that property for the community gardening. We've had a good relationship with the community garden. But they can only compost so much of those leaves. And as you notice, we've stacked them and we've found them and get them to where they need them. But yeah, I don't see how, I can't see out in the future as to how we.
A question that I would have would be if they were shredded.
Somebody would have to shred them. The unit that we have does not shred them. So, yeah.
Something for me to think about.
Yeah. Are you part of the community garden?
And
Okay.
I work at Western States, and we have cool tools, so. Yes, you do. To be a part of the community, and I love my leaf pickup, especially as you get older and they don't have a truck.
My guys love cool tools too. So we'll figure out what you've got and see if we can come up with a solution. Okay.
Any other questions for Paul? Thank you. So that brings us to our treasurer's report this evening.
It is over. Everything went well. We have a couple exit items to work on. It's even better, but it's over. So that was a big stepping stone for me on the budget. So I have nothing else to report.
So the timing for the budget will be?
The property tax next month, and the second public hearing, which will be the preliminary hearing on the full budget, and then at the December meeting, we'll be adopting the budget, hopefully.
So it seems more appropriate to put this, and Brian, and coming out of the audit, we've taken a look at our funds, what funds we have available, and for a number of years, we've had a special revenue fund, an SRF, the 101, the street fund. That has in the past required us to dedicate revenue to that fund. A few things that have come out of the auditor and some of the recommendations from the state auditor's office sent of revenue that is dedicated by statute for special revenue funds. So Brian researched, originally by statute, the motor vehicle fuel tax was dedicated to streets, period. It was a special revenue, it was given to that. That is likely Fund 101 was created for us to receive that special revenue. But that was changed in 2013 and by the legislature and no longer valid in 2016. And we do not comprise greater than 20%. We're at about 7.4%. So based on the BAR's manual, based on auditor's office recommendations, we will be coming to the council in November, you will see in your packets, with an ordinance that will dissolve the street fund, section 1, or Fund 101. We will open an account in the general fund. And at that time, we will also repeal certain ordinances that have dedicated specifically the utility tax and a portion of the property tax to that special revenue fund. That will, clean up a lot on the path of compliance with what the auditor would like us to do. So street fund will be going away. We will have an account within general for the street. If you have questions on the overall mechanisms of exactly what the statute is, to answer that, revenue fund, and we don't have to fully always show dedicated revenue sources to feed that fund. So that makes our life as a small city a lot easier. So that will be coming up in November. That will be separate. It obviously feeds into the budget, but it will be separate and apart from the budget. But I am running under the assumption, because it is more or less a housekeeping issue, I've directed the treasurer to begin budgeting as if the 2023 one, but we'll have. So when we do present the budget with the call-outs and everything like that, it will look a little different at that time, because we are going to go ahead and begin budgeting like that, but the ordinance will be brought before you at the next meeting. Any other questions? So that brings us to our clerk planning code enforcement report. Thank you.
I have a bit of a lengthy report this evening, so I will do my best to move through it as quickly as possible. The Millwood Park Master Plan project, as you know, the Planning Commission has been working on this through the summer. We've completed our public input at this point, and so I'm going to give you a quick rundown of what we did, what we learned, where we're at now. Master Plan, we have a number of items in the park, equipment, and amenities that are outdated or failing that need to be replaced. It seems like this is a good time to maybe stop and reevaluate the needs of the park users. There's never been a park plan for Millwood Park. We've just sort of installed different items when a bit of a mishmash out there. One of the big reasons that we need, and that is more and more important as we go forward, so we need to bring our equipment up to meet those requirements. And then lastly, in order to go out for grant funding to do improvements in the park, we need to have a park master plan for most state funding opportunities. So the Planning Commission was, to begin with, receiving the public input. My experience with calling for public meetings and public workshops is you don't get as much input as you would like. And so we went a different route this time. There are 3 summer meetings in June, July, and August in a booth at the Millwood Farmers Market. People who are making comments on some decent commission and information through finalize a draft plan and then recommend that to the City Council. So in my conversation, we talked about some items that had been determined by staff and the mayor that were must-haves in the park. So the first is that, of course, the playground. We were looking for possibly a paved or hard surface event plaza area that would accommodate gatherings, maybe the farmers market, things. Those are very popular. And then the wading pool and splash pad. I want to point out while we're looking at this area, and something that you don't see, you can see that we have lots of what I would call wasted space here. What I learned from is that the older your equipment is, the more of an area around it you have to have. I've been referring to it as the area of influence. And so with our swings that were there when I was a kid. Merry-go-round, we are required to have way more equipment. So what that means is that we could either maybe provide more equipment, more of a variety by upgrading, or we could lessen the area of the playground to allow for maybe some other type of amenity. So I think that's interesting. When you're looking at this photo, you can really see that. I asked them to consider a couple of other things while they're talking about the park. With the Argonne Widening Project, the traditional tree that's been used for the city's Christmas tree will be removed. We don't have a tree. What?
Maybe.
It may be removed. Seriously?
We've got a whole process before.
So we don't have a tree in the park right now that would be appropriate. They've been asked to consider whether or not they would like to see a theme that is a trend in park planning. What makes our park unique? I think the go-to answer there would be the wading pool. That's not something that you see anywhere else. And then having to consider liability and insurance requirements, which is probably wasn't even a couple of pitfalls I asked them was to stray from our directive, and that's a little bit of the reason why I'm here with you tonight. We can get a little off track at the Planning Commission level if we're not careful. I asked them not to consider the dollars and cents. I think this park master plan should be looked at like the comprehensive plan. It's a future plan of what we'd love to see if everything was in a perfect world. So let's get that set and then go out for funding on that. The efforts of other jurisdictions. An example of that would be sand volleyball. That had come up in 2018 as something that people were interested in. Spokane Valley has an extensive sand volleyball set up at Browns Park, and so I have suggested that they look for things different from what others are providing that we can add to the community. And then, as always in Millwood, trees are a big consideration, and anytime a tree, I ask them to just trust me that any trees that would be removed will be replaced tenfold, and so those have been their directions. So starting with the June farmers market, just to kind of give you an idea what it looked like, our consultant put together these boards. They're about 5 foot high and 3 foot wide, and they stood independent of our booth. As visitors came to the booth, we gave them 4 stickers each, and they were asked to place their stickers on whatever of these activities or amenities they liked the best or would like to see in the park. So we've got a theme here. The 2 themes that the consultant tried to lean into would be the railroad due to our location right next to the tracks, and then also to the mill. You'll see over here some wood type amenities. The Christmas tree and the community events got a lot of stickers. This is a water feature similar to what's at Riverfront Park. That got a lot of stickers. We were able to get some kids using that equipment, so good turnout at our first farmers market. This has been an interesting process to watch it unfold over the summer, some things that we answer some more direct questions. Far and away, our commenters said they attend, or what's the word I'm looking to, go to the park 10 or more times a summer. So again, we were in the farmers market, so you do have a little bit of a captive audience there. And when you look at the top park at the farmers market, but on this back side where people were asked what they'd like to see, music and concerts was the runaway winner there. I don't know how many folks considered, but that was what people wanted. Movies in the park, and then the big items at farmers market around. At least half of every person who visited with us at the booth wanted to make sure the merry-go-round, the introduction of car shows in the park. We quit doing car shows in the park about 5 years ago due to the damage that was being done, and that will come up here in just a bit, but those were the big things that people asked for. Surprised that picnic shelter, but people really like the picnic shelters and the barbecues. Consultant came back at the July farmers market with 2 different options for park layout. So this layout here on the top would keep the tennis courts where they are. Event plaza with a Christmas tree right here. The blue would be whatever water feature we decide to go with, and the purple is the playground. And then, of course, down here, keeping that lacrosse field. The second option just kind of swapped the tennis and the playground rectangular. This is a semicircle type plaza with a Christmas tree right here in the center. Alan came to me and told me that the tennis courts had also look at replacing those. And so that is why at this midpoint, we started looking at changing the configuration. See here that the configuration with the tennis courts moved off to the west, and the playground is sort of the centerpiece was the preference. We had one gentleman ask if we could move the playground even farther away because the kids playing distracted him during tennis. So
When you're in the park, you want quiet.
you don't want those kids having fun. So the plaza space, the half circle or the square, those were pretty 50-50. Then we get to the water feature, which is one of the items that I would like you presentation here tonight. The wading pool is a very sensitive subject in this community, and at the beginning of this process, my belief was that we would replace the wading pool with a new pool that was handicap accessible, but still a pool, because Millwood is unique in the fact that we have a pool. But through conversations with days, people were very much more inclined to want a splash pad. And I think on what we know of the managing lifeguards, we were late opening this year trying to get lifeguards. We were early closing this year. And I think the question needs to be asked, if we invest a bunch of money in a water feature and then can't get a lifeguard and it sits there all summer unusable, is that really what we... At this farmer's market, we didn't hear anything about car shows or the merry-go-round, not once. What we did hear was that people want more and better updated restrooms, more lighting through the park, more parking, which I think is such a funny comment, our community events. The other thing that we heard at Farmers Market number 2 was a lot of negative about the open field. A lot of people think it's very underutilized. It's too big. They do not want organized sports there. We got a lot of negative feedback. And so followed in and asked draft from the consultant that repurposed that field in a different way. So going into, I'm referring to at this stage as our final plan. This is what months. So again, we've got our tennis and pickleball courts here. This is the same size. Very popular. So our existing restrooms here, whatever our water feature ends up being here, our playground here with our plaza and our tree. Our yet to be determined material, whether paved, asphalt, crushed gravel, but these provide that accessibility and other differently that they widen out. This loop that has been provided here would be a similar paved or gravel surface, but would be wide enough for vehicles. And this is an answer to the car show questions. It would be something that vehicles could drive on, either, have your cars parked along the loop for your car show, or food trucks down into the farmer's market where they're not allowed to go at this time. But it would be a compromise to have events in the park with vehicle traffic, but also to preserve our sprinklers and our grass. These little boxes you see here, 10 by 10 boxes, those are meant to show how a farmer's market might set up along this. And then I asked for a couple of additional picnic structures because we did get so much feedback on that. And then this was my attempt to answer the call for more restrooms. Not necessarily because I think we need more for park users in general, but in learning about all of this, I found that food trucks and food vendors have requirements from the health department that they have to be within so many feet of potable water. And so this building, half of it being a restroom that would not be open on a daily basis, would not create any more daily work for staff. But when an event, the event, or for the vendors that need to be close to storage with potentially maybe a roll-up window if we had an event that wanted to do a little snack shack or ticket. And so that's what that building is. And then lastly, as an answer to the more parking, I asked to have some additional parking included down here. For events only, that might be an answer to the farmer's market. They're available for customers. One of the questions that our consultant asked in the market that I thought was really interesting was someone was complaining about parking during events. Because if it's just events, then that's just a programming issue and we can work with that. So this is where we are today. This is what will be going to the Planning Commission for their discussions. The couple of items I'd be interested if you have any thoughts on would be, we did remove from our, he mentioned the basketball courts. And the feedback we got in 2018 was that people didn't really like those smaller courts. The minute we removed them from the rendering, then we heard how important, if that is something that you would like the planning. Another question mark for me is, do we want to add another tennis court potentially? And then the biggest question of all would be that if you have any thoughts on that water feature. At the Planning Commission level, we can get a little carried away and out in the weeds, and I include myself in that. So as I take this back to them for them to finalize the details before the public hearing and sending it back to council, I'd just like to know really quickly if any of you have any thoughts on any of that.
Comments from the council?
Up at the upper right-hand side, it looks like car parks up there. What are those?
Yes, so that was something that the consultant to have a car show. That was his idea. And I don't, that requires cars to be out on the trail. At some point you'd have to drive, but I just had something different in mind, and so that's what that is.
And I think I've talked to you, but I'm a big proponent of pickleball. So I'd say if we can do more pickleball, you know, it's only increase in popularity. So I'd propose more pickleball courts.
Other?
On the hard surface courts, aren't there 4 there?
That's 2 tennis courts, and then on each tennis court can be divided into 4 pickleball courts.
So we'd have 8 pickleball courts and 2 tennis courts?
We have 2 tennis courts, and each tennis court can be used as 4 pickleball.
So right there, I mean, we're saying 8.
We do get lots of calls at City Hall from adults complaining that people won't share, and which is why I mentioned maybe adding another court.
They're pretty full every day, it seems like.
Especially if we're going to have music, they'll be going towards the tracks instead of the residents. And I think that just looks good. I think there's some extra space up there for those courts, and perhaps maybe, and I don't know if you separate those or not, but you could have certainly do away with a little parking up there on the trail, and maybe have another. If we're thinking about the little squares being farmers market, how are they going to get their stuff in up?
Yes,
And it doesn't look like how are they going to get in and out of it without driving on the grass?
So, point here that we can offer, but I think in this scenario, the intent would be that they would come in from this parking area
Yeah.
and then drive around. Well, you could come out here and go down
They're
I
using
mean,
the trail then.
they are, yes, they could. I will say, doing now, which is coming in through here and driving through the park.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, I guess if given the choice, I would rather open up that little stretch there to get them in and out of there.
So, Christina, why did we not just complete the loop?
I don't know why he didn't complete the loop.
Well, I
could-
mean, this obviously isn't going to bid tomorrow. We can make different changes and things like that as we're going through. I think one of the other things that we've also received some feedback on is that from an exercise and walking standpoint, folks would like a loop. I think it would be nothing to close that loop off and then allow folks to come in and out. Each one of those little areas there, obviously or those little side paths, we can make larger or smaller as part of the design. I think more the idea for the council to be aware of is, as Christina was saying, some of the concepts of what we're talking about. So this obviously is talking about 2 tennis courts or 4 pickleball courts. Does the council want to put stock in the pickleball courts in that area to the more likely detriment of not having basketball courts? Because the only thing I could see would be shifting that hardscape, the tennis courts, either northeast or southwest, and adding basketball courts adjacent to that, making a full hardscape area. If we want to add more tennis courts, we would probably not tennis pickleball, we would probably not have basketball courts. The other second item is the loss of the play field. Initially, the loss of the, I will say, sports field. There is a play field there. There's places for people to run around and run their dogs and throw their frisbee and stuff like that. I will say a couple things to that. I was originally a huge proponent of having a sports field. I no longer am married to the idea of the sports field. We've had a number of complaints from the neighbors around there because people using the sports field can't seem to respect the surrounding neighbors, particularly the lacrosse players, who I hoped would have been a more sterling example, but they're lacrosse players, I guess. My kid played lacrosse, so I should know better. Second is I think what we see here in this area is that play field takes a lot of maintenance. It takes a lot of water. It cuts a lot of grass. It takes a lot of effort to keep those lines up, to make it smooth, to make it a play surface, and it may not be where we want to put our continued operations and maintenance budget. But the last thing that I think that council is going to have to really start doing some soul searching on is, Christina brings up some really good points about the water feature. I think we are Millwood. We are committed to having a water feature. A wading pool may not be the way to go in the future.
We can have a picture of it.
We can do lots of things. You can have old pieces of concrete out there. We might as well put the old broken hunks of concrete right around the merry-go-round, so when you do hurt yourself, you really hurt yourself. But from a standpoint of, from the city, being able to staff that thing, keep it open, keep it clean, keep it functioning, and have it for a period that it actually gets all the use. I'm not necessarily sure that, given the way we're going now, that we should hang our hat on a wading pool, because even prior to COVID, we had a really hard time getting folks out there to act as lifeguards. And now, I think I could have offered any amount of money, and I still would have not gotten more than the
Too, and I speak for myself and for Debbie, it was our children who stepped up and took over the lifeguarding jobs. It wasn't easy. From my son's point of view, and I think from Debbie's daughter as well, it wasn't so much the kids as it was the parents. It's not an easy job to do, and that also will play into how difficult it is in the future to staff it.
And it's to people, in all honesty, but it is not something that you want to put a 16, 17 of control. They're adults. They don't act like adults. And then last things we need to think about, particularly in your position, is liability insurance. The wading pool brings its own special brand of risk. Every time our insurance adjuster comes out and takes a look at we just get popped. So there are some things from continuing insurance coverage for the risk pool. And we need to remember that our risk pools are getting tighter and tighter and tighter because insurers just do not want to insure cities, towns, any type of municipalities anymore. We don't have a lot of choice. And it's just, it's really hard, to the point where we need to be planning, the city needs to be planning from the standpoint that for many of these items, our ability to insure may actually dictate the terms of what we are able to have. So there's going to be some of that as well.
I would just like to comment on what the mayor said. Liability insurance is going up 42% this year. So what we're paying. So, you know, as much as we can reduce our risk, we need to do that.
So I have a couple of comments based on that. So, yeah, I don't think, looking at the sport court, I don't think it's big enough. But what you could do is you could double it and put other sport courts on the right-hand side, so the east side. Basketball really isn't compatible with a sport court, but then you could have folks playing tennis and pickleball. And I don't think that's unreasonable. I mean, you know, pickleball is the most popular sport in the nation, and I think it's only going to continue to grow. Now, I am biased. I am completely biased. But you know, we can't play in Millwood. We have to go West Valley because it's always busy. Get busier. I like the overall design. I think it's really nice. The only other thing that I would say that would be a cheap option for folks is if we did stations like exercise stations on the loop. That would be a cheap, easy recreational opportunity.
Other questions, comments?
I'm not sure about the splash pad, you know, if we don't have, moving the playground away a little bit might be better. I mean, I don't know what, I guess I'm not sure what, you wouldn't be having a concert and kids playing in the playground at the same time anyway, I guess.
You'd be surprised. You'd be surprised.
Yeah, maybe we just kind of flip-flop those, you know.
Yeah, you know,
And
in a
if we don't-
concert, you not want to go swing on the swings.
If we had swings.
Well,
If we had swings, we could go climb trees instead.
Yeah.
All right.
I'm confused, I don't see a baseball diamond out there. That's just me. That's the all-American sport.
Dying sport, unfortunately.
What?
You'll never see one out there.
West Valley has fields,
Yeah.
No.
unfortunately.
My dad- my
I don't know,
grandfather-
there's 37 baseball diamonds in Missoula at one park.
Yeah, I think that's where,
37.
on the baseball fields, I think that's where you're finding is the fields that are used where there are multiple, you know, where they brand, you Merkel and those, that's where you find them. You know, having been not that far removed from, you know, scouring the earth for a practice field for a youth baseball team, the one-off fields are typically, it costs a lot to maintain them.
Yeah.
To keep the weeds off, and when you don't have a field that you can readily maintain, it's not used. That's the hardest part. I'm right there,
Rowdy's in Rathdrum.
yeah.
We go from here to Rathdrum for baseball.
Those are great fields in Rathdrum. Yeah, no, I'm right there with you. I,
Majestic Park is fantastic.
yeah, I shed a tear at the bottom of the ninth today in the M's game, and I live for baseball, but those one-off fields are hard to
But
maintain.
when I think park, I think baseball. Summer, it's hot, sweaty, baseball.
Okay,
I've suffered through it.
so with that, I do have other stuff to report on, but as you think about this, as I'm sure you all will in your spare time, if you have any other comments or thoughts, feel free to shoot me an email, and then I can take that back to Planning Commission as we deliberate. So on my normal reporting, it's feast or famine in the planning department, and right now we're in feast. So I'm currently processing the subdivision short plat of the park, actually, to separate off the water tower and the wells so that they can get their own addresses and things of that nature. I just processed and approved a boundary line adjustment up on Dalton on the east end of town. And I've had one meeting about the property at the northeast corner of Vista and Euclid. It's a single-family residence across from the high school that recently went up for sale. It's a large lot. I've met with one person already and had numerous phone calls on some applications for comprehensive plan amendments. The deadline for application on that is November 1st. And then Thursday, myself and I believe Mr. Allen will be meeting with a gentleman who wants to tear down Bank of America and put in a drive-through car wash. So we will be meeting with him on that. Code enforcement, nothing new to report. On the city clerk side, Councilmember Culler and I met with the firm that's going to handle the new logo and branding. We met with them a little over a week ago. That was a fun meeting. The one gentleman actually grew up over on Stout, across the street from Debbie and Kyle for a number of years. And so he's really excited. He referred to this as his dream project. They will be forwarding to me a survey, just asking general questions. I'm not sure completely what, maybe Mr. Culler in his report, but I will likely be sending that out to the council for you all to take the survey. So I don't know if any of you had an opportunity to attend the Fresh Hop Festival that was in the park this past weekend. I drove by, it looked like they had great attendance, and from what Kyle heard, he was working with the guy who was running it. They thought that it went pretty well, so that's good. And also, I've never gotten ever, for any sort of an event, a report that the park was cleaned up appropriately until the beer festival. So I do that with that what you
So
may.
we are responsible.
Well, the beer drinkers are.
Just baseball playing.
Right.
No sunflower seeds everywhere.
I don't know. I did forward to all of you an email that included the 3 videos that the Historic Preservation Commission had commissioned. I don't know if any of you had a chance to watch those, but if you didn't, please do. And then just a reminder that on Sunday, the 23rd, we will be having that haunted 5K over in the Historic District. And I did just want to mention, because I brought it up before, the trick-or-treating event that was market and they couldn't get the participation that they were hoping for. So the Presbyterian Church will still be having their trunk or treat, but there won't be anything going on in the park on Halloween. And that is all I have, unless you have any more questions for me.
I just have one. Did the Hildebrand concert venue get that figured out?
I think you can say, in all fairness, that additional events that were being advertised didn't happen. I think that you can say with certainty.
I just had a few people ask.
They received a visit from Liquor and Cannabis regarding their ability to dispense without a license. They've also received a visit from Spokane Regional Health District for some of their containment issues, and they are attempting to cooperate with the city and look for paths forward.
That being said, we probably are going to need to at some point do some education for our citizens about noise complaints and what a noise complaint really is and when it's appropriate to complain.
Any questions for Christina on anything in her wheelhouse? Thank you all.
One
Oh,
thing,
yes.
I noticed we have an enforcement action or code enforcement. I saw something in the paper.
Oh.
Maybe last
Yes,
week or-
yes, we did have an action for a matter over on Dalton. I sent repeated notices and got no response until the attorney filed. And then the gentleman came in and said, I cleaned it up after, or I rectified the situation after your first notice. But he didn't feel that he needed to let me know. And so, yes, that has been, he has fixed that issue and that is being withdrawn.
Thank you.
Any other comments? For mine, I think I've talked enough. I do want to let council know that we will be coming, because we don't have full approval for the Avidex proposal at the next meeting.
Yes, sir.
So the Avidex proposal is to revamp the audio, and at this point, we have decided, or I have decided to bring forward to the council a request to add video to that. So we will address and integrate both the audio and the video at the same time. So you will see that request for proposal for, or request for authorization for that at the next meeting. And that's all I have. Legal. Oh, wait, questions for me? Anyone? Anyone, anything? Legal.
Okay, I will be brief. Last meeting, council comments regarding camping prohibitions in certain areas of the city. We have, the mayor and I have kind of been exploring that issue. The first thing before we bring anything forward to you, though, is we need to ensure that we have an enforcement mechanism. We don't have our own law enforcement. We contract. I get it, Andy. I get it. There's certain requirements for enforcement of our.
We talked about liability insurance just
Yeah.
a little while ago.
I'm self-insured.
So we are pursuing that. I have had some initial discussions with the civil prosecuting attorney for the county to, one, confirm how the county is addressing prohibited camping. There are there's differences amongst the local jurisdictions and the legal community as how those laws should be written and how they can be enforced. But ultimately, before we put anything on the books, we have to make sure that we have an enforcement mechanism to carry it out. And so I don't know if that would mean amending, reviewing, or otherwise updating our law enforcement contract before we do that. We just need to get, a law on the book is great unless you can't enforce it, and then it's not. So, and that, you could enact something that if it's not enforceable is going to create only a further round of compounding issues for you. So that is being processed as we speak. So.
Any other questions for Brian? With no questions for Brian, that concludes our reports for this evening. Do we have any information for the council other than, nope? Nothing? All right, well, I'm not going to belabor. Public remarks. So this is an opportunity for citizens to address the council either in person or by submitting their remarks. Do we have anybody who has submitted any remarks for just general public remarks?
No, we have not.
So at this time, we will ask if there is any person who would like, in the audience remaining, who'd like to submit public remarks.
I feel like I have to say something.
Well, we ask that, 2 minutes, please.
Oh, it's going to be one. I'm Janice Langdon. I live up the road, and I want to say congratulations on the park. Saturday night, it was great. Everybody was well behaved. And I was walking my dogs, and I saw kids playing in the park. It was still light, and people were doing their thing. So I enjoy all of that. I love the trail. Keeping people off of that backside, though, would be
really good and beneficial just for our safety. But yay, I was excited. I was telling all my neighbors, this is the first of many, and I hope that they all go that well. So, thank you.
Great. Thank you very much. With no one else in the audience for public remarks, we'll move on to council remarks. Ms. Beasy, if you're still there, council remarks, any?
No, thank you.
Thank you, Shauna, appreciate it. Mr. Culler.
I'll just recap what Christina and I met with 116 and West, the marketing guys. So like she said, I think they're working up kind of an open-ended survey to distribute to the stakeholders, and we'll provide updates as that comes out, as they roll it out.
Thank you, Sean. Councilmember Van Hees.
I just want to thank everybody for doing, getting everything done for us, making it easy for us. And sorry for being late. I was in a history lesson. And with a high school history teacher.
Oh.
And then I went home and had to enforce what I was told. And in the middle of that, I lost track of time. So I'm sorry. I will be more prompt.
Thank you, Andy. Councilmember Sander.
First of all, I thank Lisa and Paul for following up on the cross connection stuff. It's not a very pleasant job to do, but it's an important job to do, and it's like more. So keep it up. Thank you. Also, this Wednesday's Mass Farmers Market, so available to good to show up. The 15th is the Friends of the Argonne Library book sale, giveaway, donation sale. We debated on maybe the changing the name because it's not for sale, but book donation sounds like you're going to give them something, and we want them to pick something. So anyway, that's I think the early bird, you can go there at $5, for $5 you can take all you want. Other than that, it's a donation from 10 to 3, so that'll be good. And then December, I'll get right the date, December 2nd, is that first Friday in December is the tree lighting and Winterfest. So things for the calendar.
Thank you, Dan. Councilmember Scravens.
I have nothing, thank you.
Thank you, Kelly. So do we have any announcements from anyone? No announcements. So set next meeting. Our next regular meeting is November the 8th, and as we discussed earlier, we will need a quorum +1. Is there anybody who knows right now if they will not be able to attend the November 8th meeting at 6 p.m.?
I know, this is Shauna, and I know that I will not be able to attend. I can call in, but I will not be in Spokane.
If audio participation is fine, if that's available, we're looking for somebody who's just basically going to be off the grid.
I might need a 15-minute reminder prior to the meeting.
We can.
Provide that.
All right.
They can make that happen. All right. So it does sound like we do at least have a quorum +1. We have a 4-member council that meeting, so that will be good. So right now, the next meeting will be set for November the 8th, 2022, Tuesday at 6 p.m. And with no further business before us, I would ask for a motion for adjournment.
Move to adjourn.
Is there a second?
Second.
Moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
This meeting is
Aye.
adjourned. Oh, thank you, Shauna. This meeting is adjourned.